lot of the things that I was taught when I was younger was pretty aggressive on whoa breaking. And as you came in, the dog would flag a little, or his back end would drip a little, or he'd look at you the corner of his eye like, oh crap. And they would almost associate whoa with some type of pressure. This method, it was like, you come in, they get taller, they get bigger. I've even had people in fear of messing up, they haven't done anything. So now I got a 5-month-old dog that doesn't even know here or know, or heck, he might not even be that well crate trained. As a bird dog trainer, you're going to mess up or you get good at it. I would say slow down, but don't be afraid to teach a few things. He's got to learn how to learn. So teach him to be crate trained, teach him to sit, use some of the food luring. You're working with him, you're building a bond with him. Don't be so afraid to start doing something. I would go hunting with guys in South Dakota. They're blowing a whistle and they're giving signals and hand commands. We call it hacking. They're like, they come up to me like, we've hunted with you for 2 days. We've never heard you say whoa once. When I get a chance to go hunting, I want to unplug. Man, I want to enjoy what I'm out there seeing and smelling and being a part of. It's so much more enjoyable not have to say a word as I turn, my dog turns. If I do my come go with me drills, you get a dog that learns to move with you through the field, and you don't have to blow a whistle, you don't have to say one word.
Jared Moss, you're the guinea pig for this first podcast at the Pheasant Fest Eukanuba booth. I appreciate you taking the time and joining me. I know we're going to get interrupted probably 20 times throughout this,
right.
but so
excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself. Where do you come from? Your kennel and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I've been training dogs for 25 years. We're located in Beaver, Utah, which is a small little town. If you look at Salt Lake City and then you look at Las Vegas, Nevada on a map, I'm right in between those two out there in Utah. We train full-time for the public. We raise German short hairs. We used to breed a few Brittany's. We still occasionally do, but focus mostly on the short hair, and been doing that for a while now, so that's our passion.
Nice. So Utah, man, it's one of those, like, it kind of gets overlooked on some bird hunting, and then other bird hunting opportunities kind of gets underlooked.
Right.
What do you prefer doing out there?
We do chase some grouse, some blues, and some roughs, and then mostly chucker.
Okay.
Mostly chucker, and that's better up in the northern part of the state. I actually grew up hunting quail down in the desert in Arizona.
Yeah.
And that's always a pleasure to go do. Made a trip to we've done South Dakota quite a bit.
Right.
I have to leave or I stay working. So if I load up the truck with dogs and leave the state, I'm good. I can hunt for a few days.
Yeah.
But if I stay home, it's, hey, can we come look at the dog, or can we stop by the kennel and chat? So
you grew up cutting your teeth on quail down in Arizona.
I did. I grew up hunting in southern Utah mostly, and then a lot of Arizona.
Yeah.
Down towards Kingman was where we spent a lot of time. I needed a dog that could go all day in that desert down there and be full of cactus and pick them all out at night and then reload and go the next day. So that's where my love of the short hair came from, as a dog that could do that day after day after day in that nasty, crappy country. So,
it's tough. A lot of people, especially myself, I have 3 different breeds, two long tails and one short tail, right? I got the German short hair, and they'll ask, like, what's the biggest benefit? And some people put more stock in the long hair, the durability than others. But when you're hunting the desert and you got the cholla cactus and the nasty mesquite, like, I can definitely see how you might want to have that shorter hair, especially.
Right.
Man, it gets rough training out there in the off season, as hot as it gets. I mean, it's not humid, but it's still 115 degrees or whatever.
So I'm hot for us is like 90.
Okay.
And then that's usually in July. Luckily, we're pretty high desert, about 6,800 feet, so it's not too bad where I live. We have a lot of clients out of Southern Cal and Nevada that come and bring their dogs during the summer.
Gotcha.
So we can train all summer long. When it gets hot in July, I'm able to pull up, we call it bird dog camp. We go up to 10,000 feet. Mornings are 55, 60 degrees, and we train up there at the top of the mountain.
Oh, that'd be nice.
It is very good.
That'd be nice to be able to tailor your program or still get quality work even when it is hot down below. So, well, let's just shoot up a few thousand feet.
Yeah, it's 120 degrees in Vegas, and where I'm at, it's 55, 60 degrees.
Does that help with snakes and stuff, I'm assuming, as well?
Well, we don't have any snakes typically up on the mountain. I mean, you're at 10,000, 9,000 feet, so there's nothing there. Out in the Chucker Hills on the lower, 6,000 to 7,000 feet.
Come across them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't blame you, on the chucker hunting, man. I got my first taste of that this year. It was the
Good.
early season. I still haven't done the typical, like, the tried and true late season, cold winter
Yeah.
chucker. I want to try that, but I, you hear all the time people like, grouse or chucker, right? Which one's the king? And I think each of them kind of deserve its own claim to the throne almost. It's
I agree.
two different kingdoms.
Yeah. And it's interesting, as the last few years I talked to the guys out. The grouse is the king of the woods out there, and where we live, they stand in the middle of the road and look at you like they're a dumb prairie chicken. They don't even. There's not the same amount of pressure and hunting, and so a lot of our grouse you throw a rock at them and try to get them off the trail so nobody finds them. But
yeah, and
it's a different bird. It's a different.
All the rough grouse guys will hear the Westies say that, and they're like, "Yeah, but those aren't the same birds."
Right.
And it's like, well, that's what they know, that's what they see. But you're going to travel cross country to kind of see are the birds smarter just because they're further east or in the north woods? But it cracks me up when people say, "Yeah, but the only thing tough about rough grouse hunting is where you find them in the shooting conditions." I'm like, "Yeah, but." One of the main things that makes chucker hunting tough is the conditions and the terrain, right?
Yeah,
so it's kind of the same argument in my opinion.
Yeah, and a lot of times, a lot of the good chucker hunters wear out a lot of good boots.
Yeah,
they do. They put in the miles.
So when did you leave Arizona to go to Utah? What brought you out of the desert into the mountains?
Family. Really, it was family. My wife was from Beaver, Utah. My grandparents on both my father's side and my mother's side were in Beaver. So I lived in southern Utah, but we spent a lot of time fishing and hunting mule deer when I was a kid up in Beaver. And it was just a draw to family and being able to recreate. I mean, the town that I live in, the population's like 3,000, 4,000 people.
That's nice.
I can be in the woods in minutes.
Yeah.
Minutes. So
that's seclusion, man. That's nice.
Yeah. I actually got into hound hunting because of that, because I literally can catch a mountain lion a mile from my house, 2 miles from my house. So got into hound hunting doing that. But yeah, Beaver was just a family draw and a lot of good childhood memories, fishing with my dad up in the lakes. And I used to fly fish a ton. That was the natural draw was, hey, we're always going home to let's figure out a way to make a living there.
Man, you touched on something that really speaks true to my heart in the hound hunting.
Yes.
I got bit by that bug, and that's really what brought me into the gun dog world. And I've told the story a number of times on the podcast is, I spent a few years just making it up as I went along, figuring it out, like, just go run the dog. And some days we had success, other days we didn't. This was coon hunting more specifically. But I've always wanted to. One of the few things that I haven't gotten to experience yet in the dog world is lion hunting with hounds. And I don't have to take a lion. I've had lion. I know it tastes good. It tastes like pork pretty much.
Yeah, it's a white meat.
Yeah, it's actually it's got a unique texture almost,
pretty clean.
But flavor. Yeah, it's really clean. Surprisingly so. A lot of people may not even understand that a lot of lion hunters, most of them eat their catch. But the lion hunting, man, out there, are you still doing that?
So I've guided that professionally for about 7 years. Still doing that, still enjoying it. It goes up and down a little bit, right? The last 4 years I've hit it really hard, and I'm never home in the winter, and my wife and kids suffer for that. So not this year. This year we've dialed back a little bit, but usually when the bird dogs go home, we'd full-fledged hounds and just get after it and go after it.
And what kind of hounds are you dropping?
Mostly blue ticks, registered blue ticks. I've got a couple walker and a few cross dogs.
Okay.
The guys in the West don't care about papers. They don't care about any of that. They just want to catch game.
Well, it's funny you say that, man. Like houndsmen, you want to talk about people that just do it for the dogs.
Right.
Houndsmen are kind of that, to where they don't care about breeds or kennels very often. It's just like, is it a quality dog? Does it have a good nose? Is it cold, warm, whatever? They'll be looking for a specific type of dog. But, it's just like they're trying to get it. It doesn't matter if it's mixed or an English or whatever. Down where I'm at in the southeast, the majority of the coon hunters just run English dogs now. And but you start asking them, like, their history or line, like they don't know.
They don't know.
I mean, it's just, that dog has a good quality over here that I like, and that one, could use some more of that, and they'll just cross it. But
I remember that getting into the hound world. I was like, hey, what's your pedigree? Send me a pedigree. I want to see this dog and where it came from and all that, because that's what I built my livelihood on was bird dogs and pedigrees. And my wife kids me a lot because I can keep in my head 6-8 generations of bird dogs, but I don't know anything about our family tree.
Right.
Past grandpa, I don't know a name. So, but the hound guys, at their heart and soul, those guys bleed. They bleed dogs. They love that. Everything is about the dog. A true houndsman that you find, they're all about dogs, turning young dogs into mature game catching dogs. And some of them are breed specific, but not so much. They're just, hey, can this dog catch a dry ground lion in arid temperatures in Arizona? Can he go to Oregon and catch a bear? Can he, what can he do?
Right.
And
well, and can you think of another section of the outdoor space, dog specifically, that you're going to go run and not even attempt to shoot the game that you're pursuing? Like, how often do houndsmen tree a bear or a cat or coon, and they don't even shoot the animal for whatever reason? Maybe they just don't want to take it, or maybe it's too young. That is the beautiful and really the ethical part about hound hunting that a lot of people may not realize is those hounds are going to let you put your eyes on the game before you take it, so you can determine, is it a male, female, is it a tomcat, whatever, too young, too old, whatever. You can actually get up there and make the decision in real time.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that's lost on the average person that hasn't, let's face it, the average person, even in the dog space, has never been around a pack of hounds doing what they actually do.
Right. Yeah, and you and I talked a little bit about this before, and that's, how many guys are going to get up in the middle of the night or chase game all day, tree something at night, walk in 4 to 5 miles, get back to the truck at 3 in the morning,
then go to work,
and then go to work. Yeah, these guys, it's their life. It is their life. It's a lifestyle. I've talked to Chris Powell at Houndsman XP. He's a mutual friend, and I've been able to hunt with him in Arizona, and him and I are chatting one day, and I'm like, it's a lifestyle, Chris.
It is.
And in that moment, I think he's like, you're right. It's more than just. It is. It's more than just hunting. It's feeding them 365. It's staying up with them all night. It's doctoring them when they get cut and bruised. And
in that game, it really is not a matter of if. It's a matter of when.
When you're going to get the stitches out.
Yeah, you're literally targeting animals that.
Apex predator.
Yeah, apex predator that can take out your dog on any given hunt. And, all houndsmen they're familiar with that heartache of losing that dog that they spent years developing.
Yeah, your 7-year-old dog that
Yeah. And that's why when they get to the old dog, if you get one that makes it 9, 10, 11, it's like that is that houndsman's life. Like that is his baby. So houndsmen kind of get a bad shake on, they might be impersonal with their dogs younger. But it's because they're kind of bracing for themselves to possibly lose that dog. But the ones that stick around and earn it to where I would say that they kind of have a deeper, bond with their dog through those hardships. And stitching them up, stapling them up all the time. The war stories that they have with each one of those dogs.
There's not a more ethical way to hunt big game than with hounds. Like you said, you can put them in a tree or you can put them in a bay, and you can be very selective, and you can harvest what you need to. And then when predators get out of control, you're able to manage those, right? If you've got too many lions in an area, then it's, the houndsman can go in and find a track or predation. A lot of the houndsmen today in the West ran cattle. They're family cattle operations, and they started hunting lions because they were killing their calves. And so they got dogs and they chased them down and they killed that lion, and they didn't lion hunt again until another predation issue.
Yeah.
And that's how some of those, a lot of those ranchers and farmers out there in Arizona and New Mexico and Arizona, that was their lifestyle, right? They were protecting their lifestyle.
Right.
For us today, it's, we've treated hundreds and hundreds of animals. I think I've shot one.
Yeah.
I've shot one mature tom lion. I've never killed a bear.
Now, what are your thoughts about some of the people that might be listening? Is, you referenced the Chris Powell episode I recently did, and the response from the listeners was resoundingly positive. And I did have one guy write in, though, and obviously wasn't a proponent of hounds. He was a bird dog guy, but
Sure.
he took issue with the hounds, quote unquote, pestering the game, right?
Yeah.
Harassment of game. And, it's somebody listening to this, if they're on our side and we have
Right.
an appreciation for hounds, we might want to turn our nose up at that. But you know what that is, it's a talking point. What we talk about, how
Right.
like we need to have these conversations, and if there's people out there that really view hound hunting as harassment of game just because they're
Right.
yelling at them at the bottom of the tree, I would say, my point of view, that's anthropomorphizing the lion and
The
just saying,
lion.
oh, hearing a barking dog is annoying to them. But what's your take on somebody like that kind of looks down on the hound hunting for something as little as that?
Keep in mind that these are apex predators. A mountain lion goes in the tree, one one or two reasons, right? He's either bored of those dogs barking at him, he's tired of it,
Or he's going on defense.
or the lung capacity of a mountain lion, his lungs are the size of your fists, so he can sprint for 300 to 500 yards, just flat out. But the dogs can put on distance, and so eventually the lion gets tired. And a lot of times we've caught those lions. If it takes us a little bit to get in there to the tree, the lion's up there half asleep.
Yeah.
He's not bothered by the dogs. Like, yeah, he got irritated, so he went up the tree, right? The
Yeah.
bears do the same thing, and eventually they get irritated, they go up the tree.
They're more like catching their breath than anything.
Yeah, they're more like, hey, I know what happens here. A bear that gets ran quite a bit, he knows as soon as he goes up a tree, if you got good dogs. If you got bad dogs, they just keep running. But if you got good dogs, they go up a tree, and they know, hey, pretty soon somebody's going to come gather those dogs and go away. And man, I as far as pestering the game, I would say there might be a small percentage of people that are pushing that limit, but the majority of the houndsmen out there, they want to see their dogs excel. They want to see their dogs catch the game. They want to get in, take some photos, enjoy that tree with somebody, maybe a new youth hunter or somebody that's never had it. I can still remember the first mountain lion tree I went to. It was like, this actually worked. We took dogs and we caught a predator that could easily turn and kill any one of these dogs.
Yeah.
Who could bounce down through these cliffs and leave these dogs in the dust, right? But we caught him, and it's a thrill to walk into there and see those dogs doing what they're doing. And the predators, like, the mountain lions, like, yeah, no big deal.
Yeah.
Right? You gather up your dogs, you leave, and boom, you might, nothing ever. You're not really hurting the animal. You're not pushing that animal to a threshold where he would be exhausted, because they're intelligent, man.
Yeah.
They know. So
well, and it goes to, I mean, I try not to scoff at or turn my nose up at anybody's concern, right? Like,
no, that's a genuine concern. But if you came
concern.
and hunted with me,
yeah.
If we went hunting and we caught a couple of lions or a couple of bears, you would see pretty quick.
Well, I agree. Put eyes on it and experience it for yourself.
Come and do it. Yep.
But even if you don't, my question to him was, where do you draw the line on if we're going to start addressing the perception of annoyance on, at least on how wild animals perceive dogs. Like, I could make the argument that our dogs bumping birds is annoying them, right? Do they really want to go flush and fly away from our dogs?
Right.
It starts getting into slippery slope territory where, like, all right, yeah, I can see it, but I think that's coming from a standpoint of he's probably thinking of himself sitting in a tree and a bunch of hounds yelling at him.
Right.
And it's like, all right, well, if we start putting ourselves in the shoes of the wild animals,
sure.
Where do you draw the line of the animal, quote unquote, being annoyed by it or pestered, right? Like, it's a slippery slope, but.
And the other side of that coin is you have places that have banned mountain lion hunting, and now the conflict that they're having with the lions coming into the public areas are escalating. I mean, they're coming in and grabbing cats and dogs, and they find a couple free meals, and it's like, oh, why would I go look for deer when I can go into town and get a dog every night?
Exactly.
Right?
You have that. Like California, they banned lion hunting, and now they're actually killing more lions now through the government than the hunters ever did.
Right.
And, if people listen to this want to say, oh, yeah, but houndsmen don't use the meat. Well, we already talked about we do.
We do.
And are you telling me that the government is using that mountain lion meat? Like, come on.
Right. Well, you have issues of just safety. You've got young kids that are getting mauled, going out and camping in a tent, and you got a bear that's just learned learned what he can get away with, and he's in there
free
just
dinner.
raiding everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a whole other topic. But I give props to you and Chris for trying to bring some light to the bird dog world, and this is kind of one of the things that intrigued me with the hound world, is I wanted to learn their culture. I wanted to learn more about how houndsmen worked, right? What
It's
they
kind of a
do.
closed off group,
Yeah,
especially starting out.
it is, and they're apprehensive about bringing you along and but once you get in there and you learn a little bit about it, there is nobody that's more patriotic, that wants more, they want to be left alone, they want to go do their hunting thing, but when the crap hits the fan, when there's somebody in their group of friends or in that lifestyle and the kid gets sick or he gets cancer, they're the first guys to grab their wallet out of the pocket and hand money over. They're genuine good people.
Salt of the earth is really what they're just the salt of the hunting community, in my opinion. Once you get to know them, they can be rough.
They can have a shell. Yeah. But here's the point I think we all got to scream from the rooftops is we're all on the same team, and our team is being attacked. And we've got to start coming together. If you're a bird dog guy, a hound dog guy, a mule deer hunter, a turkey hunter, I don't care. We're all on the same team, and we've got to start standing up and fighting for our rights, because if we don't, they're going to be slowly taken away.
Yeah,
it's happening across the country, and you've got a great podcast. People can go plug in and listen to that. Chris Powell does a great job about trying to spread that word. If you're a bird dog guy and you're listening to this, I would encourage you to go download the Hounds on XP podcast and plug into a few of them and listen to those guys. Yeah. They have some awesome stories. If you got some windshield time, there are some great stories about houndsmen all across the country. You can learn about them, and then you can learn about some of the issues, because the houndsmen are kind of the low-hanging fruit, right? They're the easy targets for these activists to come after. Once they wipe out the houndsmen, guess where they're going next, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to come up the chain, and they're going to find out the bird dog guy or the mule deer hunter, and they want to take away all of that.
Yeah, it's step one. And I mean, they found a little success in California already.
Right.
Now they're trying it in a different way, in a different lens, and throwing language with e-collars in there that has no business even being included in that.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff. If somebody wants to hear more on this topic, Chris Powell and I, we jumped on our soapboxes for quite a while on an episode recently, so go check that out. But I agree wholeheartedly with you. I am curious, because it does sound like you have a strong passion and love for hounds. Where did the bird dogs come in? I know you said that you got introduced to that earlier on in Arizona, but how did bird dogs become your business more so than the hounds?
Yeah, we got it down that rabbit hole. So I started with bird dogs when I was 15 years old. I grew up fly fishing and mule deer hunting up in Beaver, up in Utah. And in the off season, after mule deer hunts are over, we didn't really have anything to do. So I was a kid out in the desert riding my dirt bike and running around with a pellet gun, and these birds were out there. And I got with my dad one day. I said, "Let's go figure out how to get these birds." And we were hunting them down on the riverbeds. Well, they would fly into the tamaracks or somewhere where we couldn't physically get the cactus patch, or we'd shoot a bird, it'd go down and run into some thick tamaracks. We couldn't get him out. And so I had an uncle that had short hairs and Brittany's, and he brought a dog down. And we were able to recover all of the game that we had shot. And I think we killed 6 or 8 birds one day. His dog didn't point very many birds that day, but she retrieved everything that we shot. And I was like, boom, light bulb for me, right? Got to have a dog. If we're going to hunt these birds after deer hunting's over, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
And after I got my first dog, man, I just fell in love with it. I've been blessed, I have a natural talent to work with animals. I can think like them. I can understand their body language. I can understand dogs and what they're thinking and the process that's going through their mind. That was kind of just a natural thing that came to me. And after I got my first one, I got my second one. I had 2 gentlemen that were part of a Southern Utah Pointing Dog Club, and they would come pick me up every Saturday morning because I couldn't drive. I was only 15. That one of them, too, would pick me up on a Saturday morning. We'd go train every Saturday, working towards AKC hunt tests, master hunter titles. And, man, I just fell in love with it from there. It became part of who I am, and I've had dogs ever since.
Yeah.
So.
How much impact did they have? Obviously, they're picking you up and taking you out, but in terms of just teaching you how to train, like you said, you kind of had that natural instinct to just kind of read dogs and interact with dogs, but, you still need to have a little bit of a direction,
yep.
right? So, how did you go about figuring out your direction? Did they help with that, or was that just years of trial and error?
They did. They had their styles, and they had been back to Iowa at Doc's Dog Kennel, and they had done some work with Harold Adams out there and learned his style of training, and they had good foundation work. A lot of the stuff that I learned then I don't do today. Everything today is really quite calm and soft. And when I about 18 years old, I was still working dogs, still working most of my own dogs. I served a mission for my church. I came back, started doing some school work, and I had guys calling me, hey, can you work this dog for me on the side? Or, hey, Robert was one of the gentlemen that helped me. I know you helped him with his dogs, or you worked with him in the gun dog club. And slowly, just word of mouth, hey, will you help me with this dog? Will you help me with this dog? And the next thing you know, we're doing it part-time on the side, just hanging out. And
your shingles up and taking appointments.
And I was always interested, so I went and slept on Ben Garcia's couch at Hideaway Kennels in Colorado, and I learned as much as I could from Ben. Dave Walker, went up and saw Dave. Dave came down and did some seminars for us. Had a good friend, John Lee, who runs and owns GundogBreeders.com, and he brought in some other pros, and then I would get on, go see the Smith seminar and go see Delmar and see those guys, and bought every book, every DVD you could find. I have it. I still have a whole collection in my house of all these old books, and I'd read each guy's book and try to understand their methods and watch videos. Dave was a big turning point for me. I was doing a lot of the Smith stuff, a lot of the woe posts and that, and once Dave came down, that was a big changing point for us, probably about 15 years ago. He came down with the...
And Dave, for the listeners, he's West Method.
Dave Walker, yep. Yeah. So you have Bill West, Bill Gibbons, and Dave Walker, who all kind of trained together at one point. And, Dave would come down and he did a seminar. The first seminar I remember he came down and we did a 3-day seminar. On the end of the first day, I was watching him work dogs in such a quiet, soft, subtle manner, using these very light cues, using the e-collar a little bit. But he was taking dogs off the chain there. We had a group of 20 or so participants, and he would take a pup that was tying a lady in her chair, and he would slide that leather training collar over that pup and walk out there, and in a matter of a minute, he would take a dog that was being wild and crazy, and he had that dog calm and focused.
Right.
And just his mannerisms, he was quiet. He was a calm person. That resonated with me a lot. And I watched him in those 3 days, and I was blown away about the progress he made in 3 days with dogs that was taking me 10 or 15 days. And so then I picked his brain. I called him all the time, and we had him down for multiple seminars. And I really appreciate Dave. I love Dave. His book is horrible. If you buy his book sorry about that one, Dave, but the book was bad because I would read the book and not understand.
Yeah.
Once you watch the West method, the Gibbons method, Dave Walker, Steady with Style. Maurice Lindley does a fantastic job. Maurice's book is great. I'm a visual learner, so once I saw those guys, I was like, okay, now I understand what you wrote in Chapter 3. Chapter 3 was horrible, and Dave knows that. His book was hard to understand unless you knew him.
But this is great for somebody that's interested. They go look up Dave Walker and they order a book, and they're like, oh, hold up, like the West method, like this is supposed to be one of the premier methods. And then you read that book, and it's like that might turn you off. But knowing how you learn, because I'm kind of similar to you, where I just obviously with the podcast and who I talk to and all the seminars, like I'm just after everybody, all the information. But the West method, I would argue, out of all of the ones that I've been around in all the clinics, you kind of need to see somebody that knows what they're doing for it to make sense. I mean, even training with Mo and Martha's book, she does a much better job along with Mo breaking it out to where it's digestible, but you still kind of need to see it in action for it to make sense. And then once you see it, it kind of clicks, right?
Right.
And so it's interesting that you were training real heavy within the Smith method prior and then went to the West, because as I've broken out these methods, you can't really argue with the results of the West or the Smith, either one, but the Smith has been around forever.
Right.
But a lot of the Smith guys that listen to the podcast, whenever I talk about the West, I'll get an onslaught of messages of it's the same system, and it's like there's similarities. The
There are.
principles are still the same,
Yeah.
but there are differences. So, like, what stood out to you within the West method that you didn't really necessarily feel you were accomplishing within the Smith method?
Uh, the big thing was woe. The woe, taking away the woe posts and the check cords and the flank, and coming and putting on a leather training collar. Dave's method was this leather collar, a heavy leash. Got to have the brass snap there, or a brass clamp, gives you the weight. Because I've tried every other clamp out there. The aluminum ones don't have the weight. It was him slowing down and doing a really shake the buckle, give a little bit of tug, and ask the dog to stand. Stand becomes whoa in my book,
Yeah.
right? So he was teaching whoa, but he was teaching he called it stand up, stand tall. And when I'd watch him teach the dogs that, it was a very subtle way, a very soft, kind way to teach whoa, which I had done the half hitch around the waist and all this yanking and cranking and doing all these other things. And I was watching him shake that buckle, tug up on it a little bit, and the dog would kind of stand there, freeze up. And then he'd start walking around, and I'm like, he's whoa training this dog in 2 or 3 sessions and making some progress. Right?
Just between the thumb and index finger, essentially.
The guy shake, and that blew me away. Was such a subtle way to teach stand up. And then as you work the dogs on that method, they actually get bigger and taller. A lot of the things that I was taught when I was younger was pretty aggressive on whoa breaking, right?
Yeah.
And as you came in, the dog would flag a little, or his back end would drip a little, or he'd look at you the corner of his eye like, oh, crap. And they would almost associate whoa with some type of pressure.
Yeah.
Right? And this method, it was like, you come in, they get taller, they get bigger. Dave,
Hence the steady with style is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've seen it, and I wish there was a way, I've talked about this before, that you could take the same dog at the same learning level,
right,
and put them through multiple methods and see how they would turn out. But obviously you can't do that. You train one, you can't just hit reset.
Right.
I wish you could.
Right.
Litter mates don't even count because they're all different.
Yeah.
But that is something that I've noticed, to where, again, you can't argue with any of the predominant methods out there. And the Smith, it's like it's going to work.
The one thing in the dog world that I kind of there's probably a 4 or 5 year period there where I was like, hey, there's one way, there's this method.
Yeah.
And I was all in on this West method or Gibbons method or whatever you want to call it. And I loved it, and as dog trainers, though, we got to start opening our mind, and we got to start learning. Because I just spent 2 weeks in Texas working with James Ham, Lone Star dog trainer down there, learning the obedience side, the way he trains. He was in the military for 35 years, and 30 years, sorry. But you can always learn something from somebody. It may be something you use. I've talked to Heath Hyatt on the Houndsman XP. There's things that you learn as a dog trainer, you put it in your back pocket, you forget about it. 6 years later, there's this one dog that you're like, oh, I know what you need, because you're not responding. The method I'm using right now, or the way I'm trying to teach you whoa or sit or heel,
it's not connecting.
It's not connecting the dots for the dog, right? So you got to train the dog in front of you, and you got to be able to, you got to have some tools in your tool vest to say, hey, this dog needs this dog needs that. He'll respond better if I do it this way, right?
Well, and it's also just putting your own flavor into it. It's like whether you talk to Martha or Mo, and I've spoken on the podcast before, to where you go sit down and talk to Rick. Like, they're all trying to still learn and pick up things too. They're still adjusting. Mo's doing things differently today than he did 5-10 years ago. And, it's my buddy Grayson. He talks about, a lot of people want to talk about dog training as an art, right? Yeah. Well, if it's an art, artists create something new, right? Like, take something, take the concepts, add your own little flavor into it. Now, that doesn't mean that, you go market it as a brand new entire method and off the backs of the people before you. Have some respect for that. But if you're not trying new things and new concepts and testing this out and trying to improve this, then us as dog trainers, we're not furthering our cause, right? Like, we can always be improving something in some way. And I think so many people, I believe, and I preach to everybody, especially when you first start out, pick a method and go through it, because you don't know what questions to ask.
Sure.
to make your own way through it. So
Right.
start with one and go
Right.
through that, but be trying to figure out what are the common threads that I can plug in here,
Plug and
plug in
play.
there, because
Right.
that's when you're really starting to round out and become a quote unquote dog trainer, as
Yeah.
opposed to somebody that just follows a step by step instruction, right?
Right. There's some principles in dog training that they're tried and true. You want to call them the 10 commandments or whatever.
Yeah.
There's principles that are going to bleed through every system because they're canines. They respond to certain things almost systematically, right? And so those principles are there. They're in the West method. They're in the Smith method. They're in whatever method out there, right?
They're baked into the cake regardless whether they acknowledge it or not.
Yeah. I mean, even the guys that are doing just strictly obedience for residential programs, right? There's a lot of concepts that they're going both ways, always, and so, yeah, don't. I think as a dog trainer, I kind of fell on that for about 4 or 5 years, where I was like, I don't need to learn anything else. This works. It's this method works. I refined it for me.
Yeah.
Plug and play, plug and play, plug and. Yeah, but there's a lot you can learn. There's a lot to learn, and I think opening your mind and progressing as a dog trainer is super important. Because there's just stuff. And I listened to one of your podcasts the other day, and then I think you made mention pretty much, hey, the way that we train now is not the way we trained 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And if we're not progressing, we're actually doing a disservice to the dogs.
Yeah.
We should be getting better as a trainer, whether you're training 1 or 2 dogs of your own. I will say this: turn it on YouTube, and it's like a fire hydrant, and there is so much out there. So you're spot on when you say, hey, pick a method and try to go down through that method and figure out what it is, and work with your dog on that method, because the methods usually they compound on each other, right? There's a step 1 that goes to step 2, and there's a reason you do it a certain way, because at the end, the dog kind of puts all the dots together, puts the puzzle together, and he goes, oh, you just want me to stand here while you flush the bird, and then you're not going to go get it after you shoot it? The light bulb clicks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, almost every method wants you to have that nice finished dog. We're all trying to get to the same point. If you go down one path and then you jerk over here and you come back over here, you get confused, your dog gets confused, and then you get frustrated, and that your confidence that you need to help train the dog is not there, right? Because you're frustrated. You don't really know. You're like, well, maybe this will work. And the dog's reading you like a book going, he doesn't even know what he's trying to teach me. So, yeah, pick a method, maybe go down, learn it all you can, and then okay, good. I got the Smith method down. I got it down. What's this West method? Or what's this? What's that? We can always be learning.
I mean, there's so many similarities between all the methods, and it's like I was in the field with Buddy recently, just a few weeks ago, and while I've been training mine for the most part the West method style, we all have the remote stop, right? Like a nick, and they stop. Well, in the Smith method, you have the rolling stop, like you're going to be climbing up pressure until they stop, and then you stop, right?
Right.
And so that right there, to where one is static and one is kinetic. Right?
Yeah.
If I hand you the e-collar remote and you're a Smith guy, while my dog has a remote stop, if you're rolling and using continuous pressure, my dog is going to come back to me because that's how it makes sense in my brain that kinetic continuous pressure means move, right? And it also makes more sense in my brain that just momentary a nick means stop, right?
Yeah.
And that makes sense to me, but there's plenty of people out there that the other opposite way. But it's like just little differences and stuff like that, to where like that is a big difference in my opinion between the West method and the Smith method. But either way, you're still ending up with a remote stop, right? And so like a competent dog trainer, whether I could hand my e-collar remote to you and you're fine either way. It's just like, oh, okay, roger that, drive on and go do it. But that's why it's so dangerous if you start down this the Smith road, and then you jump over to the West road and then back over to Smith. Some of the elements that the step-by-step and the linearness of it can kind of fall off the tracks if you're not careful. But if you're brand new, that's why I say it's safest to just pick one method, go through it, figure out what you don't know, and then start playing with it.
No doubt. I think you're spot on. Especially where you're, gun dog it yourself. These guys are home training their own dogs.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to say you can't get a 2 or 3 year old dog through one of these methods, or and then you're like, hey, I want to try this. And as you work the different method with your dog, he can learn a different way.
Yeah.
Are we all going to do that? Probably not. But if you're super bored at home and it's the middle of winter and you want to teach your dog to force fetch a different way than you do the train retrieve, dogs are smarter than we give them credit, right? And if they get, he's doing the toe hitch instead of the ear pinch, or he's doing just collar pressure instead of he wants me to put the buck in my mouth and pack it around, right? Like there's different ways. And the one thing I learned from James Ham down there was he calls it calling an audible. So you start the session, maybe you want to teach the dog heel. And there's some leash work that you can do to get almost any dog to heel. Well, there were certain dogs down there that wouldn't respond to leash pressure, or it was too heavy for them, right? So then he's like, hey, let's do this. Let's take off this leash and the chain collar. Let's put on a slip lead. Let's put on a flat collar. So you got to call audibles in your training.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, the one little dog I worked was a Yorkie. He was like 6 pounds, a little more. It was a Morkie. And everything I did with that dog was completely opposite of what we were doing with Labradors.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa, you can't put a leather leash with a chain collar on this poor dog. The leather weighs as much as he does almost. So, learning to train dogs at different stages, different ways. Anyway, he had a couple of dogs that had been through his program that were there for boarding, and now he's going to teach that dog Frisbee, or he's going to teach that dog something else, right?
Yeah.
Here's a guy that's got a dog that's doing exactly what he wants, but hey, we want to add this to it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to do that. If you fall in love with training your dog at home, man, don't be afraid to teach him a few of these other things.
And so many people will get bogged down to where this is my method, this is my system, and if it's not broken out, if it doesn't say that you are allowed to go dock diving with your dog in this method, they are afraid to go do it.
They are.
And I get it. You're so, when we come into it, especially brand new to this, you're so afraid of messing up.
You just nailed it right there. I get that phone call. I'm Jared. I'm so afraid of messing up.
It comes from a good place, and we've all been there. I was there.
We did it. All of us did it.
And that's why so many people, in my opinion, go too fast. Like, if you talk to 99% of the dog trainers out there, they're going to tell you, what's the rush? Slow down. Yep. Slow down and shut up, essentially, is what the rules. And you're halfway to being a good dog trainer, right? Slow down and shut up.
Right.
But, like, so many people, it comes from a good place when they first start out, is they feel guilty if we're not progressing, if we're not training or teaching something now, they feel like they're missing out or going to lose time with that dog, and they're not going to reach the full potential. So what do? They go out in the yard and they start pushing too fast. And some dogs, especially, like, in my opinion, breed dependent, and within that, line dependent, but some dogs can take that pressure at a younger age.
Right.
Other dogs can't. And I think it's unfair for a lot of those other dogs that can't. They get labeled as quote-unquote soft.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, this is not soft. Like, it could just be a more intelligent dog. It might need to know why more so than just listen.
Right.
And it's unfair to that dog, but it's hard to tell the greenhorn that on their first dog that, if they go turn on Instagram or YouTube, to your point, and everybody's like, the first day you bring them home, they should have a nice, clean, sitting down.
Right.
It's like they're going to start capping that drive before it should be.
I've even had people in fear of messing up. They haven't done anything.
Yeah.
So now I got a 5-month-old dog that doesn't even know here or know, or he might not even be that well crate trained. And it's like, I'll tell you, the first couple of dogs I trained, the first one I trained, man, I screwed her up left, right, down, way, up, you name it. And then I learned how to fix it, and that's, that helped me become a better trainer.
There's the value, yeah.
But, as a bird dog trainer, you're going to mess up 10 or 20 before you get good at it. Well, if you're only going to have 2 or 3 dogs at your whole, in a 5-year period, 10-year period, I would say slow down, like you're saying, but don't be afraid to teach a few things.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Don't be so concerned that you're going to teach the dog. He's got to learn how to learn, right? So teach him to be crate trained. Teach him to sit. Use some of the food luring. There's great resources out there that are free that'll help you get, easy concepts with your puppy. You're working with him. You're building a bond with him. Don't be so afraid to start doing something, even if it's wrong. Even if you go to the trainer, I won't. I've had people come to my kennel. My dog will sit on a dime, and I'm like, great, you got a pointing dog that'll sit. But now I got to kind of unteach sit to teach whoa.
Yeah, now it's a default.
And they're like, oh, I wouldn't have done that if I'd have known that. And I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, you still taught your dog something.
Yeah.
You taught him there's a system or a method, a way. I want you to learn.
He's learned that he got paid for something, right?
Correct.
Like if I listen, there's a payment.
There's a
on
reward.
This. And
yep.
As a pro trainer, would you prefer the guy that tried, did his best, trained it, to your point, the first one that you trained, screwed it all up, every step of the way screwed it up. Would you rather get that dog in, or the dog that is a year old and just has never learned to train or learned how to get paid? Like there's no operant exposure whatsoever in that dog.
This is a great question. I'm glad you asked this. For years, I wanted to wait till the dog was 8 months to a year. You guys teach him to sit and know and then call me. And I've gone away from that just from the sheer fact that a puppy at 4 to 5 months of age, I would love you to call me and say, hey, he's getting a little bit rambunctious and we're not doing, I'm too busy. We do a 30-day puppy program, and it's fun and it's exciting. We get the fire lit. We get the dog excited about hunting. We do some general obedience, and the client comes to pick up, and we teach that client, hey, these are the things that you can do at home now to continue to build this dog. So when he is 8 months to a year, he's ready for the more mature levels of training.
Yeah.
If you do it the right way, it's super beneficial. You got a 5-month-old pup that's learned about guns, and guns aren't bad, and he's learned that birds are fun, and he's using his nose, and he's pointing stuff, or he's retrieving stuff, and he's learned heel and sit. You're keeping it fun as a trainer. You have to keep things at the maturity level of the dog.
Yeah.
Right, and your expectations have to be. After you train a few thousand of them, you learn, okay, I can only expect so much at this age.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So back to your question, would I rather have the guy that's waited a year and done nothing, or the guy that's has gone a year and done a whole bunch of things, maybe wrong, maybe right, maybe tried? I would much rather have the guy that tried. Option C, get with your trainer at 4 to 5 months of age. He might have some stuff he can email to you, and you can start doing it at home. If you're going to have a trainer, don't wait till he's a year. I've had too many clients wait. A lot of Las Vegas people. It's hot during the summer, and the dog sits around for 6 months in the summertime. Mm-hmm. And then to me, he has to come. He's 8 months to a year old, but his maturity level really is 3 or 4 months of age.
Yeah.
Just because he hasn't been exposed, he hasn't been out, he just hangs out, plays Xbox.
And that's such a good point, to where it's like, I think a lot of trainers that say, somebody calls up like, hey, I got this 8-week-old pup, I want to come and drop it off, and it's just like, okay, well, wait till a year old, don't teach it anything. I don't want to call it laziness, but because I just don't think that they want to take the time to explain to somebody what to be doing, right? But like a quality pro trainer, in my opinion, knows how, if there is a problem that's developed over that 1 year, they know how to hit reset on that dog and fix whatever it is. Because the way I look at it is, regardless whether you're teaching the dog or not, that dog is learning for that first year.
He is.
The only thing is if you're not developing that bond and that relationship and teaching that dog how to get paid, boundaries, that dog thinks it owns the world, right? And so again, you go drop it off with a pro trainer, then the trainer is still hitting reset, just in a different light, right? We talk about the value of fun runs as puppies, and how we can't even say what that dog is really learning out there. That applies inside the house too. And
Absolutely.
So I'm with you. I'm telling everybody, like, hey, do the obedience, like do this, just don't get in a rush to go get a ribbon or a piece of paper, because once you start putting a date on it or expectations, in my opinion, that's where the average handler starts getting in trouble, is they're starting to push for something too fast.
A lot of the books that I read that were written in the 60s and 70s, it was like, wait till, that was the standard response.
Yeah.
Hey, Pro John, what do I do with my 8-week-old pup? Nothing. Wait till he's a year and call me. Well, back then, they could also take a year-old dog and run him out and find a covey of quail every day.
True.
And in 30 days, they had a dog that has seen more game than a lot of dogs will hunt all season. I got a couple of dogs that didn't see
some
that
dogs
much.
In a lifetime nowadays.
Yeah. So in their defense, it was a concept of, hey, just wait till he's a year, and I'll take him, and then I can go
Well, and back then
And
they didn't have the resources where you couldn't send, somebody's e-course or YouTube or
right,
books and
exactly,
magazines. And,
exactly.
now it's like if you don't know something, you just haven't Googled it.
Right.
Right.
Right, right.
It's,
So I think that was a standard response, kind of just in from the trainer standpoint, when your mentor said this and you just kind of went with, yeah, you're like, yeah, just wait till it's a year and then we'll
yeah.
start training. We're so much further along now, and we've got people like Eukanuba that are creating formulas with DHA that is helping that puppy's mind develop so much faster and actually be able to retain information. And we've come a long ways. So
Yeah.
waiting for a year is like, yeah, you are wasting time at
Yeah,
that point,
you
right?
really are.
There's a lot. Those dogs at 4 or 5, 6 months of age, they're like a sponge,
Yeah.
and they are learning. Whether you're teaching them to become a good citizen or be a bum on the couch, they're learning, right?
Yeah.
If they're learning to chew and dig and do all those goofy things, then that's because of default you haven't spent time with them or taught them. They're learning,
Yeah.
and then a year later, going, crap. My dog's chewing all the sprinkler heads in my yard,
Right.
and I could have
I could
solved that as a 5-month-old
avoided
boy.
this, yeah.
Yes.
Just by setting some boundaries and some rules,
Yes.
and you don't have to go full on out there doing hand signals and whistle
No,
stops and
no,
all that stuff.
no.
But you still, as a handler, you still need that year to develop that bond, because whether you send off to a pro trainer or not, you're getting that dog back. And so
Right.
unless you're just made up of money and you're going to go knock the rust off of them every fall, I'm sure
Right.
you get the phone calls like, "Hey, I'm headed to Montana next week.
Right.
Can you clean up everything that I've failed to
I
follow up
haven't
on in
done.
the
Yep.
past 6
Yep.
months?" And it's not a knock against everybody. Everybody, it is what it is, but you still have to maintain
Yeah.
the training level. You still have to have some sort of base knowledge of this
Right.
stuff.
That's one thing I really liked about the West method. Call it what you will, Dave Walk. Stand up, stand still, style, steady with style. Call it whatever you want. It was so simple and it was easy to replicate that my clients that live downtown Las Vegas could go to the baseball park, put the leather training collar on, do some drills. They could keep the dog at a 80 to 90% proficiency without having big woe posts or quail recall pens and all these things. That's one thing I really liked about that method is you can keep a dog pretty sharp in and around the house, bebopping around, doing a few 20-minute drills, and
It seems like it's a learned behavior. Like it sticks with them a little bit
it does.
longer to me.
I almost feel like the dogs retain it. That was a big eye opener. I had a gentleman that got deployed to Iraq and left his dog with his girlfriend for 18 months and came back. And in 2 days, he's 2 days of doing his homework.
Back to normal.
Dog was right back to where he had him. And I was like, and as a trainer, like you're saying, I have dog guys that call me and say, hey, it's too hot down here. Can I send my dog up for the summer? Or I'm going to go on a big hunt. Can I send him up? And I'm getting a dog back in a matter of a day and a half. I had him back to where he was 18 months ago, standing birds, retrieving birds. I mean, the retention was like, whoa, this is huge.
Yeah.
Right? I kind of, it's sometimes our training is too mechanical and it's not fluid enough with the dog, like you're saying.
It's funny.
They retain it better.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. Like I was talking to some buddies at a NASCAR trial recently, and we're just talking dogs. You know how we all do. And
Sure.
and I'm trying to I'm just kind of diarrhea of the mouth at this point, trying to get something. A point across to some guy, some guys that are not unfamiliar or not familiar with certain concepts, and it's just like they kind of live in the world to where, to your point, the mechanics, to where they're always involved. They're always the one with the whistle. They're always the one commanding them. And I'm trying to get across them, like, if you train the behavior the correct way and the dog learns what they get paid for,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have to command your dogs all the time. You shouldn't have to turn them in the field. You shouldn't have to tell them whoa. You shouldn't have to do any of that.
Right.
And the way I summed it up to them, and at the time I said that, I'm like, that may have been stupid, but it resonated with them, so maybe it's not stupid.
No.
I asked them, I'm like, do you want an obedient dog or do you want a trained dog?
Right.
To me, a trained dog knows what's expected of it, the behavior that is accepted and what's not, and to me that is a trained dog. Now, don't get me wrong, my dogs aren't there 100% of the time.
Sure.
There's days and there's good days and bad days. Just they're still dogs, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
I'm not exactly the world's most experienced dog trainer, but
Right.
at the same time, like that should be our goal going out in the field.
Right.
Like that's when somebody says, "Well, I like talking to my dog," I'm like, "Well, talk to your dog."
Right.
You know, it's America. It's however you want to do it, right? But at the same time, like I personally, I want that relationship in the field with the dog
Right.
that I don't have to talk to my dog. I
Exactly.
can if I want to,
Right.
but I don't have to. And some dogs become dependent on that, especially if you've run for years on that.
Right.
You shut up, all of a sudden that dog doesn't know where you're at in the field.
Yep.
It's like, oh, Dad's not over here. I can go bust that bird over here, right?
Right. Right.
It's
like a constant thumb on the dog, right?
Yeah.
And I'm with you. One thing that I took away from that, the silent methods, is I would go hunting with guys in South Dakota, and they're over there blowing a whistle, and they're giving signals and hand commands, and we call it hacking. They're
Yep.
hacking that dog, and they come up to me like, "We've hunted with you for 2 days. We've never heard you say the one word whoa once." And I'm like, I'm always talking to my dog. It's just a different way, right?
Yeah, body language.
I give them a finger. They know that means whoa. A little teeny nick on the collar on a very low setting, and they know that means whoa. Just it. When I get a chance to go hunting, I want to unplug.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I want to enjoy what I'm out there seeing and smelling and being a part of. And if I've got to hack, I had dogs that I hacked a lot when I first started, and now it's like it's so much more enjoyable to, like you said, not have to say a word. As I turn, my dog turns. If I go this way, he fades in front of me.
Yep.
It's almost like him and I have a bond. There's this imaginary string from my belt buckle to his collar, and if I do my come go with me drills, going back to the Smith method, but a lot of that's I still call it come go with me. If you do that the right way, you get a dog that learns to move with you through the field, and you don't have to blow a whistle. You don't have to say one word.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally you'll say ho and turn him. Oh, hey, we're going south down this creek instead of north.
Yeah.
Ho. Boom, dog goes.
But there's something different of you just going ho and another guy like, come around now, let's go now, all right now. Beep, 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 it's just like it's like when did the drill sergeant get here and start yelling cadences, right?
Exactly.
But that's a lot of what people think training is it becomes to where like I have to steer this dog, and I want the genetics and the desire to hunt in that dog should be built up to where we really are kind of working
as
together.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to like full circle to the guy that was talking about hounds pestering mountain lions.
Right.
We have to worry about pestering mountain lions, but the average bird dog owner doesn't even worry about pestering the other people in the field or their own dog in the field, right? So, it's funny, but it is America, right? Hey, if you want to sing to your dog and you want to hack your dog, cool. Don't complain when the dog's not listening to you or hunting with you, though.
Right.
That is why a big reason why.
Right.
So,
I remember Dave. We were talking one day about whoa training, and he made the comment to me. He said, a lot of these dogs I get that I fix, when the trainer is taught whoa means take a step.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I've never heard anybody explain it to me that way. Because he had a couple of dogs he'd brought down with him, and it was like dog would lock up, we'd start to come in, and if you said the word whoa, then that dog took a step. He had actually made that connection in his mind, because every time the dog took a step, the trainer or the owner said whoa, and they were trying to make that verbal cue. And so, just things like that, being able to teach a dog to whoa or stand up or sit with a nonverbal cue was so different to me at that point.
Yeah.
I'd been training for 10 years a certain way, like you're saying, command, listen. Here I am giving every. And he mentioned that to me the one day. He says, Jared, you're training 23 commands, and your proficiency is about 30% on all 23. Here's these 4. I want you to train these 4. Heel, here, whoa, and come go with me.
Yeah.
I want you to train those 4, and I want to be 100% proficient. And the first time he said that to me was the second seminar he had done, and it didn't hit me right that day. But that night, I'm sitting there thinking about all the dogs him and I trained that day, and I'm like, man, he's got a point.
Yeah.
I'm slow down. Shut up, get the foundation, and get it solid. And as soon as I did that, man, I've got dogs in my kennel today that know those 4 commands. We can go hunt and have a great time.
Yeah.
They don't know, they don't know come around.
You give any dog those 4 commands, the average person wanting a bird dog is going to come away ecstatic.
Yep.
Right? Like the dream dog. Everybody's like, you get one dog. Like I'm not a believer in that, but that would be their one dog is those 4 commands. I mean, it's how often do your own dogs you do just something basic like a heel or a place, and it'll blow somebody's mind, and they're like, oh my God, how do you get a dog to do that?
Exactly.
And it's like, do you have an hour? we'll talk dog training.
Right.
But yeah, you bring up something within the West method, and I think a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their heads around the woe piece. This is something that I got through with Martha when I did that episode with her. Is like we are training woe.
Yeah.
But their refusal to call it woe, and I get it, and this is what I explain to everybody, is like the average person with woe in the toolbox should not have woe in the toolbox because they're using it at the wrong time, to your point, teaching the dog the exact opposite of what that behavior is. I think I did an episode with John Hand, Perfection Kennels, and he put it in words where some dogs just like to see birds fly, right? If we talk about training dogs and drive, their reward, if the dog's reward is a bird flying and it flies, it rips that bird and you're standing there yelling, whoa.
Right.
That is a reward. That is a reinforcer to that dog. So you're literally teaching that dog that whoa means chase that bird.
Yeah.
Right? Conversely, if you shoot that bird, what are you teaching that dog? Right? We talk about it all the time. Don't shoot bump birds. It's the same thing in the training field.
Right.
So why does it make sense for people to be like, oh, don't ever shoot bump birds? But it doesn't make sense for somebody not to use whoa on bump birds, right?
Right.
If you really think about that, you don't need whoa. And that's why it's like you use whoa. I'll use it. I overlay the verbal, and Mo even says it. He'll overlay it.
Overlays the key right there.
Yes.
Because if I can teach the nonverbal,
yes,
I'm less likely as the handler to screw that up, right?
Yep.
I'm speaking the dog's language, and now the dog knows exactly what I'm asking him to do, and I layer or connect a word with that command, that nonverbal command. The dog connects those 2 dots, and you have a lot less mistakes, a lot less confusion. And that was huge for me, right? Being able to teach a dog to stand up and stand tall without saying anything was fantastic. And if I can teach my clients how to do that, which I do, man, I've just eliminated a lot of the problems, because 9 times out of 10, their verbal command isn't really great, and they don't use it the right way, and they don't know how to use it the right way. They're not confident, and their knowledge of the when and how to use the command is not great.
There's a reason why they came to you.
Exactly. Yeah. So, anyway.
Where do you draw the line?
You said a great point there. I want to say connect, you overlay, right? A lot of that method is, here's the foundation non-verbally, then we overlay the e-call, or then we lay in a verbal. That's how I like to explain it to my clients. We're going to teach this dog to stand up and stand tall. Then we're going to teach him a nick with the shake. He's going to connect those 2 dots, and then we're going to add a verbal command on top of all of that. And then I go hunting with them, and I never say whoa the whole day. And they're like, well, you haven't been saying whoa, you haven't said the verbal. And I'm like, the dog didn't need the verbal.
Yeah.
He went on point. He knew his job, because you and I have been talking. He knew what the expectation was. He knew if he stood there nice and I flush the bird, and when I shoot the bird, he's going to go get it and pick it up. We've done enough of that reputation.
Yeah.
But
it literally removes you from the equation to where it's the natural relationship between dog and bird. Bird means whoa. Like I mean, you really are overlaying the bird as the cue to stop. If done correctly, and then it goes back to the dog learns how it gets paid. Where if I really want that bird, this is what's required of me, and it makes all the sense in the world. Where do you draw the line as a pro trainer of teaching the clients to maintain that standard with the dog? Because we already talked about that dogs are going to go home.
Right.
They have to have some sort of knowledge, like you just said.
Correct.
They're the ones that are going to be reinforcing this.
No doubt.
How as a pro trainer, like how much of the kitchen sink do you give to them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's that's always a hard answer. With what I have learned over the last 15 years is, I've got a morning with them, right? And I want to show them A to Z kind of what we've done with their dog. We'll do a little show off, right? And we do okay, now I go to those 4. I'm like, these are our cornerstones, guys. Yep. You've got to keep these 4 sharp so that when bird season comes, you go have a fun time. And it's 15 minutes a day. Here's the tool. You got to have the right tools for the job. I grew up, my dad was a mechanic. We replaced a clutch in my Toyota pickup one night without a jack to lift up the transmission, and it was hell. It sucked, right? Because me and my dad are in there trying to hold it up, trying to get a bolt in. Having the right tool for the job is huge. So here's the tool. Here's how you use it. And I spend probably 2 hours working with those people on those 4 things because I know they're not going to retain. I've tried other send home lessons where I give them all the information, right? And about 2 hours in, they're glazed over and they can't retain it. Yeah, it's the fire hose. So I simplify it down and I say, look, here's how we do heel. Here's how you do whoa. Here's how we work recall, right? And then come go with me. Those are your 4, and they go, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
And that's all I want. And then
4 is easier to swallow than 30.
13 or 16 or 18 or 25.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they do those 4, their lives are pretty good at home.
I was about to say that's what I would say the average bird dog hunter wants, right? Like not everybody's after that, master hunter and VC. It's just most people just want to go enjoy their dogs out in the field and know that the dog's not going to run into the next county, and
those clients become my friends because the door's always open, right? Hey, call me. You're home 3 weeks later and you're struggling with something, you call me. You take a 15-second video clip on your iPhone nowadays.
Yeah.
You send it to me, and I go, hey, your timing's off right here, or try this or do that. And they're like, oh, that fixed the issue, right? Mm-hmm. And so
that sounding board is so valuable because you may think that you're doing it right, but just a quick text message, just check in with you, and it's like, oh, if you think you're doing right and you have a mistimed cue in there, you could be layering that in and really digging that deep into the dog, but just being able to send that to a buddy and you're like, hey, half a second quicker on that. Oh, cool.
Right. You're doing it. Sometimes it's just leash guidance. Hey, you're missing that. You're actually even though you're pushing forward, the way that the leash was moved down on his left flank, you were actually almost pulling his head around, and he wasn't understanding what you asked him at that point, right? It's just little things. It's not big things. God, there was a thought I had there for a second that left me.
Oh, I'm good at taking everybody's thoughts away. Well, no. you mentioned your buddies calling you and everything. What as we start kind of landing this ship, tell everybody where they can find you, on social media. Get a hold of you, figure out the programs, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, we're online, bestgundogs.com. I'm pretty active on Instagram. That's probably where you'll find me, just at Best Gun Dogs. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have TikTok, all the socials, but I'm more active on Instagram, just kind of where I landed.
Well, it's
before it was what it is today. It was it was easy. It was fun.
Social. It has its places, especially in this world. But it can be a drag sometimes for sure. But the links will be in the show notes. But as we wrap this up, I like to ask everybody at the end, what's something I should have asked you that I didn't?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think we covered a lot. I think, we never. That's a good question. I don't. You got me there.
I always like throwing it because it's amazing how some people will just take you down a completely different rabbit hole that I would never even think of.
I think one thing that we could hit on as we're here with Eukanuba is the importance of quality food for your dog. I think we're missing the mark on that a lot. I was in Texas. I was working 47 different dogs down there with that guy, and it was a board and train system. We had people bringing dogs in on every food under the sun because they're there for 21 to 30 days. Mm-hmm. So you keep them on their food. And I am still, and these are people that are well-to-do, and I'm blown away at what they are feeding their dog. It's just junk. In a simple term, it's junk. If you got a hunting dog and you're expecting him to do some performance, you better be feeding him something that's giving his body and his mind the things that he needs to learn and function. And I've recently, the last year or so, even when we're doing, say I've got a dog in that we're working on whoa training, and we're really putting a lot of reps on him. A handful of kibble in the middle of the day keeps that dog just a little bit sharper, Feeding him the right way, feeding him proper nutrition. If I get a dog that comes in on Olroy, I'm just like, man, I'm switching him over to Eukanuba as fast as I can, because I'm going to start asking him to do tasks that he's never done. And if he doesn't have the brain power, if he doesn't have the nutrients in his mind to help keep him focused, I only get a 3 to 5 minute session instead of a 20-minute session, right?
I think that's where it falls down on a lot of people is they just assume that it's the physical nature of the food, right? They don't consider the mental acuity and the aspect of what we're putting into our dogs. Garbage in, garbage out, that doesn't only apply to us. It's the same thing. I mean, we've all had that dinner or lunch that we regret, and it's like, oh, mind fog. Like, I can't think right now. I'm just bloated. I just want to go take a nap and not come out, right? Same thing with the dogs.
Exactly.
You go fill them up with junk, you're going to get junk out.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate to say it, I'm 40. What I ate when I was 20, if I eat that today, it makes me feel like crap. It's just, if we go to a really greasy burger joint or really greasy pizza place, it's like, oh, you pay the heavies the next day. You don't feel good. And having your nutrition dialed in, I take supplements. I'm hiking a lot. I'm out. I take a lot of mountain ops just to stay hydrated. I use their Ignite program. I like that product a lot. It's easy. It keeps you hydrated. And I look at my dogs, and they're doing more work than I am. Why would I not feed them and fuel them with the proper nutrition?
Right.
And I get a lot of response to that. Oh my gosh, it's $100 a bag, and I'm like, dude, that bag is going to last you a month.
Yeah.
I mean, your cell phone bill's $50 to $100. Your internet bill's $50 to $100. You fill your truck up right now, it's $180 if you got a big tank, and it's like, it's just crazy. I think that's the big thing I think we could end on there is nutrition is huge. And then this Puppy Pro that's come out in the last 2 years, year and a half, has been awesome. I've actually seen a litter last year that I was doing, climb board work with at 10 weeks, 12 weeks of age. I could get those dogs to turn left, turn right, sit down, play heel, all with food luring, all having fun. But I contribute a lot of that, them being able to do that at that age with the fuel that I was giving them, which was the Eukanuba Performance Puppy Pro. They were learning faster. They were getting the DHA. Their mind was getting things. They were learning faster, and they were retaining it better. I've got buddies that are pro trainers like, I won't even touch a pup at 10 weeks. And I'm like, I get it. But if you're putting the right fuel in that little guy from the day before he's even born to now, all of a sudden you're doing little things. It's like going back to our concept. They're learning, right? Every day they're learning. Are they learning how to be better, or are they learning how to be a knucklehead, right?
Yeah.
And if you're fueling them right and you're just asking 2-3 minutes, you're going to feed them anyway. Why not make that feeding time a quick little game and teach them something?
That's just it. It's a game. You're shaping behaviors.
Exactly.
You're not doing a full-on place command, right?
No.
But you are shaping that to where then you can label that or name it later on that specific behavior. But at the same time, it goes back to teaching that dog how to get paid.
Yeah.
Right. Like luring. I'm not the biggest fan of luring outside of puppies. I'm a huge fan of it with very young puppies. Because that's how they learn to get paid.
Yeah, it's a game.
Yeah, it is a game to them. Like, I got paid. And then guess what? You start taking that away from them, or you make it variable.
Right.
Then also, well, how do I get that food? Right. Then you have the dog like trying to problem solve instead of just, I jump on this place, I get paid, right? No, then you take it away or pay them every other time or every fifth time, every 10th time. They're figuring out, well, why didn't I get it this time? I got to do it faster. All right, I got to do it longer. I got to do it sharper, fill in the blanks. But you're absolutely right. And back to your point earlier, you're talking about how things improve over generations and decades.
Right.
It's real quick for somebody to acknowledge that our genetics are better nowadays.
Yes, they are.
The information is better nowadays.
Yes.
The training methods and concepts are better. We're learning all that, but yet they still feed old Roy from the 60s, right? And it's just like, if the science has gotten better conceptually on dog training methods, how can you say the science hadn't gotten better on actual dog food?
Man, I think we could all do backflips right there and end that. That's perfect. You're spot on. That puppy stuff, like you're saying, you're engaging the mind. You're teaching them how to learn, right? And you're molding those things with that little bit of kibble. You're going to feed them. Take a few minutes. Toss a piece, have them go pick it up, then they come back to you. They're learning how to recall. They're learning, like you said, they get on the place board, and then we ask them to do a few more things. And you make it just incrementally harder, Next thing you know, you got a 6-month-old puppy that's sit down here, heel, and you're not even paying him. You're paying him with affection instead of food.
Exactly.
I had a lot of. I was on the soapbox for a long time. What kind of treats do you give your dog? And I'd give. Oh, we don't do treats. Rah, rah. And I still don't. I just use the kibble as the reward, right?
They're daily rations.
Yeah. If you can't take 5 or 10 minutes and play with your puppy every day and
you shouldn't have got the puppy.
Teach them a little bit, right? We got issues. Yeah, you shouldn't have got a puppy. If you haven't got 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, I had a friend there having issues, and this is not a bird dog or anything. Just friend, got a dog, right?
Just got a dog, yep.
And they're having issues, and I've gone over there, I've shown them like this is how you heal. I've shown all of them,
right?
And but they're not in this space, and they're not dedicated dog trainers. And finally, they called. They're like, we're still having issues. I'm like, well, send me the video of your latest training session, or today's session. Oh well, I'm not training today. I'm like. 10 minutes a day at least, like 10, 15 minutes around there.
Right.
Don't put a stopwatch on it, but go do 5 or 10 minutes. And they're like, man, life. I'm like, if you can wake up 5 or 10 minutes earlier, right? Like, what's 10 minutes of sleep going to cost you? You got the dog. You owe it to the dog to do it because you're going to end up, and this dog is it's a Great Dane. It's a beast. So you don't put this behavior and manners on that dog now.
Right.
If it's too much for you to handle now, it's definitely going to be too much to handle, in 6 months.
Yeah. Right. What yeah. I hear you there. Knock on wood, us trainers are going to have a long. We're always going to be employed because people that don't take the time, and let's be honest, B, there are people that don't have the time it takes to make a finished bird dog. I got people that can't get birds. That there's. Things are changing in the world we live today. I've got a lot of buddies, friends, clients that are in Southern California and Nevada, and it's like, hey, it would take me 2 to 3 hours to get out of town to be able to shoot a gun. There's a reason that sending your dog to a trainer can be a beneficial thing. Time. It boils down to time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And resources, right? I can't get my hands on birds consistently. I can't get out and work the gun consistently because I'm downtown. Las Vegas, Nevada.
I tell everybody this is called gun dog it yourself, but sometimes the best way for them, their way, your way, could be going to a pro trainer.
Yeah.
I say, like, no matter what, do right by the dog.
Do the dog.
Do the dog a favor. If you don't have the desire to train the dog and figure it out and learn, then it doesn't matter how much you want to save money. You're still going to do a poor job of training that dog if you don't have an interest in it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can't have a bird dog. There's guys, there's reasons why pro trainers exist. And I'm an advocate for good quality pro trainers. I recommend, all the time. And just because you don't know how to do it doesn't mean that you can't not have a bird dog, right?
Yeah, or you can't get birds consistently for some reason.
Yeah.
There's lots of if and ands in there. Yeah. And you send your dog off for 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is, and then he comes back and he's still with you for the next 15 years, right?
Exactly.
So investing a little bit of time up front, getting that dog the foundation he needs,
100%.
It's worth it.
Well,
and if you're going to board your dog, board it with the guy that trained it for you, man.
Yeah.
Send it back there because he's going to tune it up and polish up. He doesn't want to send you back a dog that's not doing well.
I've been with numerous pro trainers who are like, this is just boarding, but I train this dog and he needs to go have fun, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's just reps that you wouldn't get by going to some doggy daycare.
Exactly.
And
he's going to learn that bad things. I hate to say it, but a lot of those places aren't really helping your obedience at all.
No.
The dog gets interaction, which is great, but he doesn't get any. Anyway. Man, it's been a pleasure.
I was about to say, before we get off on another tangent, I enjoyed this. I feel like you and I could probably go down a number of rabbit holes, but we'll circle back and do it again remote. And, maybe one day I'll end up in Utah and come see you.
Come on out, man. Come out and chase the lion.
All right. Well, it was fun, man. I enjoyed it.
Yep. Take it.